Hello friends, in today's session we are going to discuss the landmark case Mr.R.S. Nayak versus Mr.A.R. Antulay. Let us understand this case in brief. The central issue in this case was whether a criminal trial being conducted by a special judge could be transferred directly to the High Court without following due process and without giving the accused an opportunity to be heard. The Supreme Court clearly held that such a transfer was in violation of the accused's right to a fair trial under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, as well as the right to equality before the law under Article 14. The court emphasized that judicial proceeding must be transparent and fair, and no individual should be deprived of their legal rights due to mere technical errors. In its decision, the Supreme Court also upheld the principles that technicalities may be acceptable but justice is paramount, and where there is a right, there must be a remedy. Ultimately, the court declared that the previous decision unconstitutional and reiterated that any violation of the fundamental principles of judicial procedure is a clear infringement of fundamental rights. Now let us study this case in detail. Answer: Petitioner Mr.R.S. Nayak versus Respondent Mr.A.R. Antulay. Reference A.I.R. 1986 SC 2045. Facts of the case: Barrister Mr. Abdul Rahman Antulay resigned as Chief Minister of Maharashtra on January 13, 1982. After being convicted by the Bombay High Court, the court found that Mr. Antulay had illegally coerced developers in the Bombay region to purchase cement in excess of their government allotted quota by making donations to the Indira Gandhi Pratibha Pratishthan Trust, only of several trusts established and controlled by him. He was convicted and sentenced but was later released on bond. Mr. Antulay challenged this conviction before the Supreme Court under Article 136 of the Indian Constitution. On February 16, 1984, a constitutional bench of the Supreme Court ruled that a member of the Legislative Assembly is not always considered a public servant under the Prevention of Corruption Act. Based on this interpretation, the High Court's judgment was overturned. However, rather than remanding the case back to the special judge for a proper trial, the Supreme Court transferred the case directly to the Bombay High Court, effectively removing it from the jurisdiction of the special judge. This decision led to the eventual dropping of the charges against Mr. Antulay. Issue: the petitioner Mr. Antulay argued that the transfer of the case without giving him an opportunity to present his case violated Article 14 right to equality and Article 21 right to life and personal liberty of the Constitution. It was claimed that the procedural irregularities, especially the denial of a fair hearing, amounted to a violation of his fundamental rights. Mr. Antulay contended that he was deprived of two essential legal rights. First, the right to appeal in the High Court under Section 9 of the Criminal Law Amendment Act. 2. The opportunity to file a special leave petition under Article 136 before the Supreme Court. Thus, the petitioner argued that not only were his constitutional rights violated, but he was also unfairly denied due process of law. Arguments by the respondent. The respondent argued that under the Criminal Law Amendment Act, the High Court had the authority to withdraw the case from the special judge and take it up itself, provided the conditions under Section 407 of the Code of Criminal Procedure were fulfilled. However, it was acknowledged that the petitioner was not given a chance to be heard before the transfer of the case, which was contrary to the principles of natural justice and hence unacceptable. A major point of debate was whether the High Court had the jurisdiction to transfer the case. It was argued that unless the court had acted in a non-judicial or biased manner, it could not be held liable for judicial decisions. The central issue, therefore, was whether the process of transferring the case adhered to legal and constitutional norms and whether the High Court had stayed within the limits of its jurisdiction. In judgment, the 7-judge constitutional bench of the Supreme Court delivered the final verdict in 1988. The court held that the 1984 decision was unjust, illegal and unconstitutional as it curtailed Mr. Antulay's right to due process under Article 21 of the Constitution. The court emphasized that Section 406 of the CRPC 1973 grants the power of transferring criminal cases only to the Supreme Court, not to itself or any other authority unless specially authorized by law. The court observed that only Parliament through legislation can create or expand the jurisdiction of courts. The judiciary cannot assume such powers independently. Furthermore, it was iterated that Mr. Antulay had a fundamental right to a fair and impartial trial as guaranteed by Article 21. The trial was supposed to be conducted by a special judge as prescribed under Section 7(1) of the Criminal Law Amendment Act 1952. The court also stated that no person should suffer from judicial orders that violate the principle of natural justice. The absence of transparency, fairness, or adherence to due process amounted to a clear violation of Mr. Antulay's fundamental rights. Conclusion: the 1988 judgment was not without criticism. Prominent legal scholar Professor Mr. Upendra Bakshi criticized the verdict, arguing that India's anti-corruption framework tends to protect the guilty, thereby undermining the cause of justice. However, the Supreme Court asserted in its defense that technicality may be acceptable, but justice is paramount. The principle of ibi jus ibi remedium, where there is a right, there is a remedy, was applied, meaning that if a person's legal rights are violated, they must have access to judicial remedy. It is essential to remember that judges and their decisions are the backbone of the legal system. Their conduct may be impartial and guided by fairness. Any reflection of technical flaws or ideological bias in their decisions is contrary to the spirit of justice and can result in the violation of fundamental rights. Thus, the Mr. Antulay case serves as a landmark example of how the judiciary must strike a balance between procedural technicalities and the higher goal of ensuring justice. Please watch full videos, share and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.